Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws podcast with Mr. East Forest, which is the said person speaking at this moment. As I mentioned before, I haven't done as many podcasts as of late, or not as many conversations. One, because just been busy and been jamming into music and other things in life. And two, podcasts, it feels like they got taken over by this corporate space or celebrity space, or I don't know. They became TV shows, as I've said, and I don't want to make a TV show at this moment by myself on the side. I really like the audio format. I always have. I mean, my first podcast was in I think it was 2007, and it was just music, and I took it down. It was called Music Meditations. It became, I think I did 64 episodes. I was into the I Ching idea. And then when I took it down, I was like, well, because it was just little music improvisations, I think one a week. I was like, I'll put that onto, make it into an album. That became, I believe, Music Meditations. Not my favorite album, but it's very old. But it's got some cool jams in there, Hold On, and Thatcher Schmid played on there. And I think, anyway, I digress. I didn't want to make a bunch of clips all the time or try to figure that out and make TV show clips and video. And I don't know, I'm still doing it, still doing conversations, got a few coming up, and I super enjoy it. That's the thing I love, is just like talking and chatting with people, mostly listening. It's a very different format that you don't do normally in life, of listening. And I've learned a lot, met some good new friends ever since then. So I'm not giving up, but I also just wanted to take this opportunity to talk you through the new album, The Invitation, As We Gathered. There's a lot of tracks in there, 15 tracks from the last 2 or 3 years of touring. And so there's always stories behind the music, and I thought I'd get into that, but in a very, very free-form, flowing way. So if you haven't heard the album, could be interesting to give it a listen. It's wherever you listen to music. The Invitation, As We Gathered. Because this might have more meaning for you. But if you even made it this far, maybe you have an interest for at least a few more minutes before I lose you. I'm not going to lose you. I'm here with you as you multitask in your life, whether you're driving or doing chores or whatever it is. We're here. We're in it together. So this will be totally free form, and I think something that I've been wanting to hear myself, I've been noticing, and I sort of predicted this, that I would want this more and more over the years, is just honestly more and more like real life, the imperfections. I love music now. I always loved this in the past, that has just almost like the sense of place. So it's like you're there. That's one thing I love about field recordings, but it's not super polished. It's like it gets easier and easier to polish now. That used to be harder. And so, in a sense, we want an antidote to that, which is something a bit more rough and real and loose. So for better or worse, that definitely comes with a lack of editorial support. I understand that. And there's a time and place for everything. So this is not as serious. It's not as serious. It's all metaphor, my friends. So let's kick it off and see where these musings and meanderings take us. So the first track on the record, I'm not going to hit all of them, but the first track, Dive In, Gathered. Now, first off, why is the word gathered in every title? Because that's what this is about. As we were gathering together, what can happen in the live space? It's just it's a different thing. You know, when I'm playing music by myself, let's put it this way. If I've written a song or made a recording and I've listened to it a lot, and then I just play it for even one person, or I'm in the room while there's someone witnessing and just hearing it, just that, I then hear it completely differently. And so, of course, when you're making music, performing music, improvising music, and there's a witness there, one or several people or more, it makes something different happen. I mean, that's been the entire basis for the ceremony albums that I've put out, like Music for Mushrooms, Lovingly, and then the older ones, Music to Die To, Music to Be Born To, Piranha, Crystal Starship, Portlanders, I'm forgetting one. Point is, those are all inside ceremonies, improvise that music, and it's for particular purpose of how it was put together. But the point is that I'm not making that music in the studio, so to speak, or because it was a place and time. Something happened, and the others in the room were part of that co-creation. And I saw this album that way. It's like we did it together, because it wouldn't have existed if you weren't there and I'm not playing to you and we're not feeling things together. This is all about cultivating feeling for me. So dive in. It was recorded in Portland, I believe. Actually, truth be told, I think this song, or Dark Thoughts, I had to pull like half from one show and half from another, because it was just one of those things where like it ain't easy to go through lots and lots of recordings of one song and keep your objectiveness to say, oh, I like this one, or I just don't. I hate them all. That's like the hardest thing, was the curation. But there, I believe with this one, I can't remember, so I'm just going to go with Portland, but it might have had a last chorus from somewhere else, because I think something happened. I was like, oh, that was cool. I'd love to get it in. Generally speaking, I try to just get the whole thing. So the funny thing with Portland, this is one story I'll tell. It was near the end of the tour, and the touring took us to, we did a run in the southeast, just 4 dates or 5 dates, and then we did some stuff in the northeast and the Midwest a little bit, and then the West Coast and the mountain states, up all the way up to Vancouver, BC, down in Southern California. And then some times before that in Australia with Wanderlust, we did 3 dates. And then in Europe, I did a couple trips. But I remember, basically there was the main tour in the winter. Yep, winter in Europe. Let me tell you something. Good time to go to a show. Tough time to play a show or perform and travel, but it's the way it is. I'll be back in Europe this February again, doing the slog so we can all get cozy inside. It is special once you're inside to be warm. So we were doing this tour, and we were in Portland, and I like haze, a hazer on stage. I think it's a cool vibe. I'm down for the cause. And I tell the LD, I'm like, or I tell the audio guy, like, who's doing lights? He says, oh, I'm doing lights. And I was like, okay, it's this old guy. Like, I was like, this guy's been here forever. I can tell. I used to live in Portland. It's like, I know this bro. And I said, look, man, we like haze. We like dimensional lighting, slow moving, have fun with it. You can be psychedelic, yada, yada. And I said, but with the haze, do you have haze? Or yeah. I said, well, you really can't have enough. Or you can't have too much or something like that, because sometimes we'll talk about someone has haze and then they barely use it. And sometimes you can't use it from fire, whatever. So I'm playing the show, and there was so much haze. You couldn't see, like, from me to the back of the, like, 10 feet away was a screen with the visuals. You couldn't see the visuals. I mean, I was just sort of a halo, a silhouette on stage. I think to one point, Rada might have gone all the way up to the booth. The guy's like, okay, this is too much. He didn't dial it back. At which point he turned off the hazer, and it probably got like 30, 40% lighter. And that's just one thing I remember. But maybe being in the fog created something special. And just being near the end of a tour, sometimes you've been twisting and pulling songs every night, and you don't even actually realize so much the fluency or where you're at in that process until later. Because when you're in it, you're just in it. You might have tried something the night before or something else, or something just happens. That's cool. And I record these recordings locally on stage. I have like a little mixer, sort of a separate out from the Ableton. That's just like a master out. So it's a stereo. I think maybe it's more. I don't know. Point is, it's a stereo, and I might have had a mic on the piano I had. So I kind of had a little bit I could mix, not much. And that's what I'm going to tell you about Portland. My parents were there. Who else? My niece was there. I think it might have been the first time she'd ever been to a show, which was pretty special. And my agent Susie was there, and George from Ground Control. And so I remember when they came backstage and all the fog. She's like, "Is it normally that foggy?" Sort of that open, like, because that's cool if you're into that. That's just want to know like what kind of presentation we should be pitching. But funny thing is, when you're on stage, you can't fully see. You certainly can't tell what the lights are doing much besides on and off and general colors. But the shape of it, you can't see it. And so I have to see footage later to ask Rada or somebody like, yo, what was that like? What the lights look like? Track number 2 on the invitation as we gathered, Dark Thoughts Gathered, which was in Denver. And I'm going to skip over, I don't have a particular story about Denver. It was a cool theater that used to be a movie theater. That was fun. I remember it being a fun crowd. So maybe that just led into Dark Thoughts, but also getting into the latter part of the tour, just like 10 Laws, which is the third track, was in Seattle. And so that we're getting close to the second to the last show. And I was at the Neptune, I believe. I remember the green room. It's like one of those really old, cool theaters in downtown Seattle. The green room's like, I don't know, 4 flights up all these old, narrow stairs. It'd be a nightmare to move anything up there like a couch. But so I'm up there in the green room, and a lot of these shows are pretty chill. Like, we know what time we want to start, but sometimes I'm texting with Max. Max is on tour with me, and I'm like, are we cool? Like, are people in the house? He might be like, yeah, or we should start in 5 minutes or something. But no one, like, typically comes in and says, okay, let's go to the stage, or you got 5 minutes sometimes. But so I'm sitting up there doing my pregame, which mostly involves, when we get a half hour to the show, I have this process I like to go through. It's my own little, dare I say, rituals. I do a little yoga that Rada once gave me, a little yoga practice. It's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of yoga. Do some vocal exercises. I like to brush the teeth. You get dressed for blah, blah, blah. And doing my things. And then I guess I'm like, well, I guess it's time to go. So I walk down all these stairs, plunk, 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 and you're so far away you can't hear or see anything. And I get to the stage, and the stage is dark. And the stage, they go dark like when you're walking on, or that's how we'd said to do it. So I'm suddenly realizing, like, oh, shit, I think the stage has been dark and quiet for I don't know how long, because they've been waiting for me to come down the stairs. And that was a funny feeling, because normally you stop, maybe just like take a breath or whatever, turn the phone off and walk on stage. And it was more like I turn the corner and I see that it's almost like the audience is out there waiting, and you just rush right on. Maybe that's good too, less thinking. Yeah, so that was, I believe, happened in Seattle. And as my commercial break right now, I should mention that the shows coming up are going to be in Iceland, Eclipse Festival in the middle of August. Excited for that. And then in Europe, we'll be in Portugal for the first time, and then playing over in Munich for the first time. Very excited. That's in November. And then we have announced and on sale are the February dates in Europe as well, including the UK and Dublin. So get those ticks. Thank you very much. And that's that. So when I got to do Providence happened many times in the set, but this number 4, that track, Providence Gathered, was in Berkeley, California. And I played at the Freight. Cool thing about the Freight is I had gone to that venue not long before, because Rod and I, long story short, had a day in San Francisco on a layover trying to get back from Berlin. We were delayed 4 days because we didn't realize there was bad weather in Europe, and then the Super Bowl. I didn't realize the Super Bowl was happening, and the British Airways guy is like, your flight's canceled. We can maybe send you a different airport. I'm like, San Francisco, because there's the most flights home to Boise. I didn't realize that was the Super Bowl that day, so we had to stay another night, or pay like $1,000 a person to go from San Francisco to Boise, which that's not the normal price. So we had this time, and I saw that Bobby McFerrin was playing, and I saw that he had a residency at the Freight, like every Monday at noon. I'm like, we can actually go to that and then go straight to the airport. So we went, and it was incredible. Cool venue, seated venue in Berkeley. And oh my God, I was like, I'm watching Bobby McFerrin. He's a genius. I see him as a next level musician and visionary. And he's not young. And he was with 3 other people. They have their, what do they call it? Circle Songs. It's like his core group. And they were amazing. And they would bring people up from the audience and you could improvise. And I was like, this guy's the man. And he had someone doing sound for him. I thought the sound was some of the best I'd ever heard. And then at the end of the concert, Bobby's like, was thanking everyone in the group. And then he said, and I want to thank my sound guy. I can't remember his name. I did talk to him, but I asked him if he did tour work, and he was like, no. So that's why I was like, well, I don't need to remember your name because I'll just be hurting every time I know that you can't come out and do sound. But he said, Bobby said, I want to thank the best sound engineer in the business. And I was like, you're right. This guy's incredible. I don't know how he did it, but it sounded amazing. But I thought the Freight had a lot of potential. So when we booked it at the Freight, I was excited. And it was the first show to sell out on the tour too. I was like, go East Bay. And so the vibes were really high in the room, really high. I remember that. The crew was cool. And for that one, we had to use their house piano, but this time it turned out to be a really nice grand piano. Some European brand I actually hadn't played before. But a lot of times when the house says, we have a piano, you can use our piano, that's usually a bad sign. And they would say things like, I think the guy said, I guarantee you our piano sounds better than anything you're going to bring with you on the road, which I was a little offended by. But he wasn't wrong. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. It was good, and I sometimes don't love playing grands because it's so different than the upright. It's such a bigger sound and often brighter that it's like doesn't always fit, and it's almost more challenging to play. There's less nuance if you're not an amazing pianist such as myself. But this one worked. And so Providence is just on the piano and voice, and I like this performance. There were a couple to choose from, and I thought, well, the vibes are so high in the room. That counts for something, counts for a ton. And that's why it ended up on the Invitation As We Gathered album. The next track is number 6. So yeah, so far I'm doing all of them, but whatever. 6 is Cloud Gaze Gathered. That was in Santa Cruz. So Santa Cruz was the same night I played with Kishibashi on the song Nature. So I knew he was in the audience, so I'll be honest. I was a little nervous because when you have a musician in the audience that you respect, honestly, any musician, you kind of, I'll be straight. I sometimes remember that and I think about it like, oh, what do they think of this chord? Or, oh, I got to make this melody. Is it an interesting, or whatever. Your mind does all sorts of things and you just flow out of it just like meditation. And Cloud Gaze, it's interesting because the song is on the In album. So it's from a ceremony. It's the song you hear at the very beginning of the Music for Mushrooms film, too. It's playing behind Colette as that awesome shot where she's just listening and then the tears come out. And it's a song that it sounds pretty darn different on the recording. And I actually think I'm sort of mashing together probably 2 different songs, and I just called it Cloud Gaze, and then I kept messing around with it live and adding beats and different chord progressions, and it's one that's pretty open, and I added flute to it because it worked harmonically. And anyway, it has had a lot of different iterations and evolution over time, but I've played it in so many different ways for a while that I thought, I just would love to have one version of this somewhere. It's kind of mark, I've only been playing around with it live. So this is one of those, and it actually appears twice on the album because there's an alt take, the second to last track with Peter Broderick that was from over in London. So I'll talk about that now, I suppose. Just saying that I felt it was different enough, and I'm like, I'd love to share some of these moments that happen. Peter and I believe that show in London was, I can't remember which one. It might have been promoting the Burren album. And we got together. I love the Burren album, and I love Peter, and I love his music and his talent. But the Burren album, we did 3 shows, one in London and Japan and Dublin, I think. And in Japan, we were just invited, which is unbelievable. It was amazing. The Each Story Festival. But Peter had like a like a table with a bunch of loop pedals, like effects pedals and stuff, and percussion. He's a multi-instrumentalist, but in this one, he's just doing all sorts of interesting vocalization pads and effects. It's psychedelic. So Cloud Gaze London is there too. But in Santa Cruz, I thought it was an interesting one. It was like enough. I was like, yeah, this kind of has elements of different versions, so it works for me. 7 is Grandmother's Fear Gathered with Lorraine Weiss. So there's a video of this one. Lorraine had a friend. She's like, he could do some video, and I asked him last minute, do you want to come? And he filmed a few songs, and this is one of them. So there's a full YouTube version of this if you want to see a multi-camera shoot of this song being recorded. The on the record, it's a bit edited down for time, but I believe the YouTube is the full thing, which is quite a bit longer. Lorraine goes longer in her soprano sax stuff, and there might have been a section with the piano I had to cut out. I brought in a little bit of a song called Slan. That was also from the Burn album. These strings by Peter. So, yeah, I mean, that was special because I have played Grandmother's Fear many times over the years, but I don't know if I've ever played with another musician, certainly not live, on that song. So working with Lorraine, I played with her on the Ram Dass album. And it was just rad to get her there and be like, all right, maybe we'll do this, maybe we'll do that. And I think we just worked a tiny bit in sound check, and then that was it. And I love her lyrical style. She's got a lot of feeling with the sax, and I just thought it brought a new, fun tonality, and I wanted to bring that into the album. So thank you, Lorraine. That was at the Lensic Theater. Beautiful theater. Number 8 is Currents Undying Gathered, featuring Anna. So Anna obviously wasn't there with me, but there was 2 songs in one, Undying and Currents. And I started with Currents, and so I'm playing her analog synth and beats that she created in the song. So that's why I wanted to make sure she had credit. And then I'm doing stuff over that. And then that flows into Undying, which has the string sample that Lorna Doone arranged, an amazing musician. And that one I really wanted to try and take in a very different direction. Something much more almost techno, melodic, cinematic. So it had a much bigger build. But we were in Vancouver, BC. Last show of the tour. And I remember I started playing that song, and I got about 8 bars in, and there's a big kick drum. So in those theaters, it sounds big. Like, okay, this is like a dance track. And I remember someone in the audience like screamed, like, yeah. And I remember being like, yeah, well, yeah, fuck yeah. And as I don't get that a lot. A lot of times if people are lying down or we're sitting and they're tripping out, or we're all just deep in our thing, we're all beautifully tender and quiet, which is a wonderful, amazing space to play in. But it was great to remember, like, hey, this is rock and roll. Like, you're at a show, and that's awesome to just like, it was awesome. And I remember it just drove me a little bit. I was like, yeah, let's fucking do this. So I appreciate whoever that was in support vocally at the right, perfect moment. But Vancouver, a huge, amazing, beautiful theater, amazing community, really special last show. 2 things I'll say about that. We got there, and you load in the back, right? There's like a loading dock, and there was a crowd of people right by the load-in door smoking crack, and they're all just hovered around this pipe. And so we go over there, and I think Max was like, hey, you mind if we just kind of scoot you over a few feet? We're just going to load in through this door. And they all just sort of shuffled a few feet over, never like leaving their sight on the central crack, like the ring. It was really sad, to be honest. And it's just difficult energy to be there. It was almost like ghosts in a way, but it was wild. It was a wild way to like just drop in and enter. And, the venue's like, yeah, you can't leave, unfortunately, anything in the vans. We didn't loan the entire van, like even like anything, like clothes and stuff, to go park it on the street elsewhere. But I hope they're well. I hope they find their peace. All choices are valid. Everybody graduates. But we got in and we set up and we do the show, and this song happened. As you know, so imagine a big theater with really good sound, solid sound engineer, and it's booming. We pack up, last show. It's just Max and I on this one, and we're heading back. We got to go back to what's that town? Bellingham. So we had to cross the border. And that was what we had to do in order to get back to Boise the next day. It was another 10 hours. So we got to do a couple hours of driving across the border tonight, which is a bummer. But I thought the border would be chill. So we get to the border, and we have this thing called a carnet, which you have to do and pay for it, where you catalog every serial number of all your gear and all your personal computers, everything with you, to essentially prove when you cross the border that you didn't buy stuff, you don't owe customs and taxes. And if you don't do it, they could choose to then charge you tax on everything you have, because they could argue maybe you picked it up here or whatever, you sold stuff as when you were over here for a couple hours, and charge you. And so you could be charged tens of thousands of dollars, and it's a bummer. Yep, welcome to the live touring business. So we had to go into this office. You don't go through the main lane, you go through like the truck lane or something, and you get your carnet stamped on each side of the border. All right, so they say, we see what you have, and you go to the other side, and they're kind of saying like, yep, it's the same thing. So it's super rainy and super dark, like really rainy. And we get to the border and it is completely empty. And we had instructions from folks like, this is where you need to go and take this lane and go blah, blah, blah. So we're looking for it. We're doing our best. Max and I were so tired. And we see a sign. We're like, we go in and we think we do. And we go in and we go up to the dude, and it's in like a truck lane. And he's like, well, this carnet isn't stamped. This is America. You had to go to the Canadian side and get it stamped. I'm like, well, that's on the other side of the border, and we just crossed, and you can't back up. Just drive around. That's not that thing. And if you go the other way, it's sort of the same process. You have to do the carnet again. And he's like, well, you could walk over there. I'm like, walk? Like, okay, it's raining, it's dark. I'm like, is there a path? He's like, no, but just be careful. I'm like, so walk? Okay. So we parked the car, and I put the carnet in my rain jacket, zip up, put my hood on, it's cold, and I had to start walking back through the highway of the border, okay? Looks a little sketchy when you're just like a dude by himself with a hoodie on, your arms tucked in, walking in the middle of the highway into Canada. So inevitably, I'm in the highway, and I'm walking up in Canada. Some border guy who was just like half asleep in the rain and the dark at 1 a.m. is like, stop where you are, hands at your side, all that jazz. I'm like, yep, I know this is odd. The guy, he told me to walk here, which I guess you can do. And eventually he's like, come here, and he asks for, passport and the paperwork. And eventually he's like, all right, go to this office over there. I went to the office. You walk in. Thankfully, the Canadian side did stamp it, even though they could have not. And I walk back across the highway and then see my dude in the truck lane. I'm walking through like the truck lane, which is like walking through a drive-through. That's a weird experience if you've never done it at like a fast food place. And he waves me in, and then they stamp it, and we're on our way. So that's the memory from Vancouver, is crack pipes and border crossings. But the show is incredible, and I'm glad we made the effort to come to Canada. Right now, I'm in southern Utah. I've been here for a couple days. I'm going to be here, spend my birthday here, and Rada and Benji are coming down. But I'm in my new studio, which is a super weird, amazing experience to be backcountry in the middle of nowhere on solar power, off-grid, and I'm in a studio. And my buddy Steve-O built this in a 10 by 25 shipping container for himself, and he used it for years. And he had to sell it because he's moving back to Canada, and it ended up here in my place in southern Utah. And so then I had to get it placed, which is much more complicated than I thought, and get it power through upgrading all the solar. But we did it, and it's awesome. And then I brought in a piano. I brought in the touring piano, the one we used on tour from Boise. I drove it all the way down here, and then backed up the trailer right to the door, which is about foot and a half off the ground. Put a ramp across, and by myself just pushed the old piano in here, and now I've got a piano. And I got to tell you, yes, It's going to be hard to find a tuner, that's for sure. I might have to spend 2 days trying to tune it myself and do it. It's a learning process. But it is wild to be in here, have the door open, and I'm playing a piano. I know it sounds simple, but it's wild in this setting. It's hard to describe. But I also have my basic amps here and microphone and some speakers to keep the workflow going. So I'm so grateful and so pumped. So that's where I am now, coming to you purely powered by the sun and the land. Track number 9 on the invitation as we gathered, I Am Loving Awareness Gathered, featuring Ram Dass. Yes, this one was in London, and we played at the Jazz Cafe. Jazz Cafe is awesome. I've been there once before. Rod and I were in town. It was either like around the last show or when I was there working with Rachel, the editor, Rachel Claire Reed of the Music for Mushrooms film. She's based in London, and we did I remember one trip over there. We were in London, and we had a day off, and let's see if there's any live music. And she saw that Andre 3000 was doing was a Blue Moon tour, the flute album, which I was like, yeah, I'm into that. But we'll never get tickets. The capacity's like, I think under 500, and it's Andre 3000. And it was sold out, but she had this intuition to keep checking the site over the next half hour, and that next thing you know, two tickets popped up, very reasonable price, seated tickets upstairs you could get dinner. I was like, so we got tickets, and we went, and I was like, I'm 30 feet away from the guy, and a full band. Like, they had a huge theater show they crammed into this. They did 2 performances, I think, at the Jazz Cafe. It was awesome. So I thought it had a real nice vibe. So I was excited to play there. And it was a standing show, which is not normal for me. I've done a lot of lie down, and I've been doing a lot more seated shows to try and make that way more affordable, fit more of us in, and have you honestly just feel safe and comfortable. I think you can more reliably do that in a seated position. If it's in a seat, you can. I've had some shows that changed my life where I was seated, like Sigaros in 2005, Beacon Theater. Wouldn't be talking to you now if it wasn't for that, and I felt safe and comfortable. So anyway, this was a standing show, which I was nervous about, but oh my God, the London, y'all brought it. You were the coolest, vibiest crowd, and boy did I feel it. I also didn't have a piano. I had their house Fender Rhodes, so that changed things quite a bit. And it was a more, like, little more energetic, a little more bumping. And yet, I'm Loving Awareness, this ambient track, we went deep. And started to get into these places on tour at times. After he talks at the beginning, it's basically a 9-10 minute song, right? If you do the whole thing, you got some room there, and you got to go through some chapters musically. And started using these arpeggiators and the Nord synth engine in there. Just got into something that I felt not just emotional, but like it was gooey and some layered thickness. I had a few different recordings across the tour of this that it was difficult to choose, to be honest. And this one I thought, let's go to London, mostly because I remember the audience vibe. Just like, I remember there was this couple standing in front of me, and they were just like swaying the whole time. He's holding his girl, and there's another tall guy who was just jamming on it, and there's like a group of friends, and these ladies, just dropping in. I was like, just thank you for standing, and we're all in this. It made it happen. It made the vibe. Track number 10 is Cascade from Dublin. I believe it's from Dublin. I played at the Sugar Cafe. I think that's right. Cool space. It's venued, it's seated. It's velvet seats. I just combined some words. But Dublin audiences are maybe the best in the world. It's hard to say Australia everywhere, but there's a consistency of exuberance in Dublin, and I assume Ireland. And it's so sweet. And so that provides, again, the audience's vibe provides a freedom and a support when you're up there feeling vulnerable and moment to moment flowing in it, and you feel that and you're like, let's do it. Let's lean in. I'll do this. I'll try that. I'll take some risks for you because I feel safe up there. And Cascade wasn't one I was going to put on the album, but then it's also a track that's the last song in Music for Mushrooms film, and also was from a ceremony from back in 2022. So I was playing around with it live and changing it up, and this one was fun. More emotionally jubilant than introspective, and so sometimes I don't know. It's you're always trying to find a balance in a record, and I just kind of when I kept putting this back into the flow, and I still believe in like records and the experience of listening to a record. It created a nice bump emotionally. It provided a certain color that I thought worked really well. But I do remember. Oh, excuse me. I do remember being in Dublin, and I think after the show, they had booked another show, which I thought was crazy. And it was a DJ, but a really well-respected, I want to say dub reggae DJ. And so he was in the green room too. At first, I think he was kind of like, doing another show before me. And so he was a little salty, but boy, did we get to know each other. Rada and he really jammed. I can't remember his name, but I'll look it up. He was incredible. I was like, this guy is OG. So he was right after me. And the other thing from Dublin, I remember the guy who brought the piano. He brought it in all by himself. He had a van and this really cool dolly he was using. And I was mesmerized. Like, oh my God, you can do this by yourself? And I asked him, like, where'd you get that dolly? And he showed me. I bought a dolly like that. And it completely changed our process. It allowed me to bring my piano on the next leg of the American tour. And today, or yesterday, when I wheeled the piano into the studio, I thought it's possible I could do it myself because that dude in Dublin does it, and I got the dolly. And I did it. So thank you, piano delivery dude. You kick ass. Get the job done. Track 11 is Nature Gathered, which features Kishibashi and Ram Dass. And that was one, as I mentioned, where Kishi was there, and he was generous to say, oh, yeah, I'll come up and jam. And we hadn't done it before. We'd never played before. I sent him a recording in advance being like, it'll be something like this. This is the general song. But it really went somewhere amazing. And his playing is so lyrical and virtuosic and beautiful. And that was actually the first or second single we put out for the record. And of course, getting to weave with the Ram Dass songs and reinvent them in these ways is a real joy. It kind of feels like it keeps Ram Dass for me alive because I feel like he's speaking and working still with me. Just I'm pressing buttons and he joins us, and we get to hear in these new contexts. So this was a new context, and again in Santa Cruz. The theater in Santa Cruz also used to be a movie theater, and it's a little rougher around the edges, the sound system. And I remember I was working on the sound check, and we was struggling a bit. It's hard, if you're like an hour more and you're getting tired, you still have to do the show. We're doing the sound check, and then the owner came in at some point, and he's a sound guy, I could tell. And he says, well, what are you going for? And I started to describe something about like an immediacy in the mids, and we need to pull down maybe the 400 or the 300, but maybe that'll soften up when people get here. And he said, let me work on this. And he goes back and starts tweaking. It started to sound amazing. And I said, hey, man, I really appreciate you getting into the details of this and caring. And he said, oh, listen, the fact that you're even asking any of these questions or requests shows that you care about sound, and this is leagues different than the typical show that we might do. And for him, that was a good thing. He's like, that means, so let's go for it. Let's try. And so thanks to him. And that was the Rio Theater. And then Can't Fall Out of Love, Saxapahaw, North Carolina. Yeah. It's really a fragment of the song. It was actually at the end of the show, sometimes I would play and sing a bit of this and play that sample from that song. I just thought it'd be fun to put in. It's like almost like an interlude, but Saxapahaw. I hadn't heard of Saxapahaw, And when we did the show, it's, I think, outside of, sort of like a couple markets can come there, but you have to drive a bit to get there. And it's this beautiful, big old like theater converted space near the river where they had all that flooding and devastation, and that was hard to see. But this community is incredible, and also super high vibes. I remember some shows get it, and they'll make like at the bar a cool mocktail or something, and I think they made a mocktail with little mushrooms in it and stuff. I mean, they really went all the way, and I'm just like, oh my God, you guys are awesome. And different than another time I went to a venue that will remain nameless, and I looked up at the bar, and they had one of those digital menus like you see it like a Chili's, and they had a drink they made called like the Grandmother Mule. That was like a Moscow Mule named after the Grandmother's Fair song with booze. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Grandmother's Fear is a song inspired by ayahuasca. It's become like, it was remarkable. So that to be said, when the Saxabaugh crew made their own, it was a mocktail and it had mushroom in it, or a little mushroom. I mean, it had some aesthetics. It's like, good on ya. Good on ya. They also had a killer disco ball that we fired on right at the end there when we crested out in the last song. I remember that was fun. I just remember they were super sweet. And I had Lorenzo with me. It's just Lorenzo and I, and he was doing front of house sound engineering, and he did great, and it just gave me confidence to, like, Lorenzo's got this, you know. I haven't traveled with a whole lot of my own engineers, so I've used a lot of house engineers, and generally that's been fine. But you have to do the sound check thing, you know, where, meaning you have to spend, there's no way around it, and time explaining, like, this is what we're trying to do, this is what the music is, this is where we're going to go. And most of the time, they're really trying to, like, okay, cool. Occasionally, I'd say 1 in 10 or maybe 1 in 15 isn't that good, or it's a problem, or do crazy things like leave in the middle of a performance and get a sandwich or something. I mean, stuff that is just weird. But this was good with Lorenzo, and so thanks, Lorenzo. I hope we can do more shows. We'll just finish this up, and we have 2 more because we already talked about Cloudsgate. Please Pass the Bliss is track 13. It's an encore from Melbourne, I believe. And I mean, what can you say about Melbourne? It's a fucking badass city. So cool. Reminds me of living in New York a little bit, but almost cooler. It's like beach vibes, and it was awesome. And we've played in Australia twice and Melbourne twice, I believe. And it's just, well, stories about it. I remember on our day off, the day before, we looked to see what shows were going on, and like the only show, I believe, happening was Oasis. It's like, Oasis? They definitely had tickets. It was a stadium. It did sell out, though. And on top of that, the stadium was like a couple blocks from where we were staying. So we were just like, okay, let's go. We'll walk over. So I went to Oasis the night before, which, I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was very different from what we were going to enter into, but a cool experience to go to a big show in Australia. But the Melbourne audience, special. And I think that was the show that got cut short, which is totally crazy. Like, I don't want to just talk about, I'm even call it a problem. It just happened. Apparently I went over time a little bit. How am I supposed to know? Some guy, I remember, came downstage, you know, and was like flashing his hands. I was like, I don't know. Is there a fire? Like, I don't know. And then at one point he came on stage while I was playing, and I looked to my left and I saw him, but then he disappeared, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. He could have handed me a note or something. I also have in-ears in. He was trying to tell me that I needed to end, and I was going over time. And I guess I was the only performer, and we were all there just for this show. They four-walled the venue, which means you just pay for it. I don't know what the rules are, the unions. I don't know over there. But apparently I was going over about like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I think. And instead of just letting me finish, I was in my last song. I probably had 30 more seconds or a minute to go, they just killed the sound. The sound folks. So I didn't know, though, because I'm playing upstairs on stage with my in-ears. I kept playing, and I remember hearing the audience sort of like cheering and stuff in support, because they were probably surprised and they realized I was just continuing on. And I was confused because what I played at the end was this just piano vocal thing. And I'm like, that's a cool, interesting response. I felt a little embarrassed because I was the one person in the room who didn't know what was going on. And so I kept going, then finished and said thank you and left. And I just said, I've never heard of someone doing that, where you're just like, yeah, we'll just mute. Yeah. But other than that, incredible vibe. Thank you to Wanderlust for bringing me. And man, can't wait to get back to Australia. It's obviously can be challenging to make the trip happen, but boy, are we wanting to do that and hopefully spend some more time there. That's where I should be going in February, right? Australia, and then go to Europe and can't always tour when the weather's nice, but maybe I can figure that out. The last track we talked about, number 14, is Cloud Gaze, and the last track, 15, is also an alternate take of Provenance. And this one was in Japan, as mentioned prior, when Peter Broderick and I were there for the Burn album. We did a song together that started with me sort of riffing on Provenance, and he's actually in the background, but you can only hear him through the piano mics. I didn't have his portions recorded into my little recorder, but you can kind of hear him. It's kind of cool. And you hear, like, there were kids in the field, so you hear this kid scream a little bit, like, yeah. And it has a sense of place. And that I liked more than anything. And that's why it features Peter, because I think he's doing some pads again with vocals and like a looper and some verb and stuff or delay. So you have to you hear him now that you know that. But Japan, so many stories of being in Japan. I don't want to sound cliche, but like the bathroom I went to on a highway stop was maybe the nicest bathroom I've ever been in my life. I had computer screens on the walls and incredible. We went one night, Rod and I, to find Pokemon cards for Benji, because I guess the Japanese ones are special and different. And we were not smart enough. Somehow we ended up downtown Tokyo, special trip at night. It's super crowded, to go to the Pokemon store, which is actually doesn't really sell Pokemon cards. They just sell everything else. It was like the corporate headquarters we accidentally went to first. It was like, that's not a Pokemon store. So we did this whole trip, and she bought what she thought were cards, and we bring them all the way back. Turns out they were like holders for cards. Not cool for us. She made it up to him some way, but that was back when Benji was into Pokemon cards. Point is, many cool many stories. Like, we were staying in another neighborhood that had lots of cool clothing stores, and we bought some cool clothing. This is so cool. Everyone's wearing oversized stuff, so I got super into that. And they had this amazing practice. Almost every store, you buy the thing, like a shirt, they put it in a bag, and then they walk you to the door, and as we would go out to the street with two hands, they would wave goodbye and hand you your bag. I love that. Multiple stores did this. It is so sweet. You're talking, and you're going, bye-bye, bye-bye. And I was like, oh, bye. And I'm waving my two hands back, and I was like, I'll visit you again. And I hope we will. So that's the rundown of the invitation as we gathered. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this record happening, for everyone who came out to a show. I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you for coming out again. I show up because you show up, and I see it as hopefully a practice. We're not trying to get to a particular final destination. It's more like everything we do in life. It's a reminder. We're sitting around that fire, just telling stories, singing songs, and witnessing things together. It changes everything, and it's a kind of medicine and anecdote that we need these days more than ever. I feel it. I'm sure you feel it. And it's something real where we're feeling together. When you feel it in a room together like that, boy, is it amplified. So I thank you. And if you didn't get to make it, hopefully this is a way to feel like you are there and drop in. And I think that will be, that's what's cool about recordings. You think like, even if you weren't there, you can still vibe the energy, and it somehow lives and goes across space and time, just like mushrooms. So thank you for listening. We'll catch you soon. You keep walking that walk, and chat soon.